Hello, bonjour, and bonjour. I'm happy to welcome you to the last Connect and Learn of 2025. I'm very glad we can spend the hour today thinking about how to improve the experiences of the learners. I'm Daphne Bonner. I think most of you probably know that by now, Director of Programs and Engagement at ONCAT. So just a quick word about some of what we do at ONCAT. You probably remember that our 4 core areas are operating on transfer.ca, where learners can look up all kinds of pathway possibilities and transfer possibilities and equivalencies. We also devote quite a bit of time engaging with learners, supporting them in working their way through their transfer journeys. We support projects, as most of you know, to develop innovative learner mobility practices that can be replicated across institutions. And we continue to drive system efficiencies through the development and adoption of shared tools and evidence-based practices. These Connect and Learns are an important part of that work, mobilizing knowledge, supporting projects, sharing practices. And this is the time for the commercial. The program for the 2026 ONCAT conference is now up on our conference website. The conference is on February 3rd and 4th, 2026, and it offers opportunities for a range of post-secondary staff, faculty, senior leaders, all sorts of administrative staff, and offers opportunities on either one day or both days to hear latest insights on learner mobility, explore some of the cutting edge tools that are free and shared across the sector, or use time in workshops on day 2 to actually scale solutions that support learner mobility at your own institutions. Those sessions on day 2 are really intended to accelerate the implementation of transfer and learner mobility practices. So the day is not just professional development, but also hopefully a productive investment of your time for your institution and for learners. So I think Meryl is dropping a link in the chat to the conference website. So please check that out. I am here today at ONCAT's offices on Lake Ontario, on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe peoples. This is land that is governed by the district once the wampum belt agreement between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee for shared land, which is has some relevance, I think, for today's topic. Our speakers, though, are coming from almost 950 kilometers away from the shores of Lake Ontario, and they will tell you more about where they are situated in a moment. But first, I am very happy to introduce the 3 of them. Joseph Duncan is a member of Muskrat Dam First Nation within the Anishinaabe Nation territory. He serves as the Indigenous curriculum specialist at Lakehead, where he supports faculty across all academic programs. Leigh Potvin is an associate professor at and the director at Lakehead's School of Outdoor Recreation, Parks and Tourism. Leigh is interested broadly in equity and decolonization in outdoor recreation. A list of her recent published works can be found in the chat. And Julie Rosenthal is an associate professor and assistant director of the School of Outdoor Recreation, Parks and Tourism. She's a teaching-focused professor. She undertakes educational leadership in the form of curriculum development and teaching innovation. Her academic focus is on the interface between human activities and nature conservation. I'm very happy the 3 of them are here. Over to you, Team Lakehead.
Our presentation topic, and we're going to just segue into our land acknowledgement.
Thanks, Julie. Hi, everyone. Leigh Potvin and Dishnakaz, Anemki Wakwadong and Doji. So I just said in Anishinaabe to the best of my ability, my name, and that I'm from Thunder Bay. And we're talking to you today from Thunder Bay on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe of Anemki Waju, who are signatories to the Robinson Superior of 1850. It's really important to us that our land acknowledgement today is not just a rote exercise. We do have on our slide here Lakehead's official land acknowledgement, and Joe has translated it into syllabics, into Ojibwe on the slide. But we just wanted to say, sort of as an educational point, that we're an outdoor and a land-based program in this really important territory on the North Shore of Lake Superior. And the majority of our teachers and learners are settlers. So we really, in doing this work and in everything we're doing, we're trying to acknowledge that we haven't always worked in a good way with Indigenous people, community members, or with Indigenous teachings and practices. Outdoor Rec is fairly steeped in colonial traditions, and we're working pretty hard, as you'll see today, to address some of that. Of course, imperfectly, as this work tends to be. So this project really does reflect what we're trying to do to rectify and demonstrate that we want to work in a good way and in good relation with community members. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, and often as well decolonization, because we do like to talk about truth and reconciliation, but we think we need to go a bit beyond that as well. And then Joe wants to say a little bit more.
All right, thank you, Leigh. We acknowledge that our work is connected to the territories of the Anishinaabe Nation and the Robinson Superior Treaty. Throughout this project, we focus on extended beyond learning about the land to understanding the responsibilities, protocols, and relationship building that created respectful collaboration with the Indigenous communities and tribal organizations within these territories. These teachings shaped our approach through a two-eyed seeing framework, bridging together Indigenous land-based knowledge and academic perspectives in ways that honor both ways of knowing and recognition, the unique value each perspective contributes to this project. The pathways we share with you today demonstrate how settler and Indigenous knowledge systems can both be achieved. And this represents our commitment to serving these territories with respect. We carry this understanding forward through this project, as we are grateful to share this perspectives with you today. Miigwech.
Thank you, Joe. This is the overview of our presentation that we have planned. And, we will, adhere to it, but we're open to it sort of taking its own shape as we go along. So as your questions or comments come in through the chat, we will have some eyes on that, and we're open to that sort of being interjected to our presentation. We each have some predetermined points that we hope to share with you today, but we're also open to each other. We're actually all sitting in the same room right now. We're open to each other chiming in where it seems to feel right, sort of turning this more into a bit of a dialogue rather than a formal presentation. And this really reflects what the nature of our ONCAT project ended up taking. It did have a structure and a plan, but we were open to see it take on its own shape and form as the project unfolded. And we wanted to reflect that in the way that we presented our learning from it. The project itself got started back in the fall of 2022. And at that time, Joe, and I'm going to look to the right, so Joe's sitting right beside me. So Joe at that time was a contract lecturer for us. He had previously been a mature student doing his undergraduate program with us in outdoor recreation, parks, and tourism. He went on to study and do his master's of social justice studies, and then ended up working with us instructing one of our first year courses. And through his experiences, he mentioned to us in a faculty meeting, he said, well, hey, I know you're not doing a whole lot with Fort William First Nation, and I'm wondering if it would be of any help if I worked with you as a liaison between the program and the community. And we thought this was an absolutely important idea. And soon after that, there was an internal funding opportunity at Lakehead University to support EDI work. And we applied for that, seeking some resources to have us work with Joe, and he would review our curriculum and promotional materials from an Indigenous perspective. and offer us some suggestions on how we could more meaningfully integrate content that's relevant to Indigenous learners. And unfortunately, we didn't get that funding, or perhaps fortunately in the long run, because we ended up with ONCAT instead. But the feedback that we got from that first proposal was that the project itself was really important and good work to do, but that it didn't fit the funding criteria. And so that left me frustrated because we had a project that was really important, but we didn't have the resources to compensate, Joe, who had very generously offered his services. And we didn't feel it was right to ask him to do this without appropriate compensation. So I spoke to our deputy provost, who previously had been the director of outdoor recreation, parks and tourism, and she suggested we look into ONCAT. And at that time, ONCAT had an open call for proposals under their Pathways into Post-Secondary for Students Impacted by the Pandemic. And so we saw this as an opportunity to actually build on this initial idea and expand its scope to include an understanding of the relevance of our program to the First Nation communities across Northwestern Ontario, and to understand what interest they had in the kind of subject matter that we offer, what kind of barriers exist within our current program structure, and how we could work together to come up with ideas that could overcome the barriers that prevent access and relevance to the learners coming from their communities. So this time we actually were successful, and I remember getting the email from ONCAT and doing a little whoop woo in my office and running down the hall to Leigh's office to see if she'd gotten the message. We were really excited to get the support from ONCAT. And that allowed us to create a couple positions. One was an industry training specialist, and the other was an Indigenous community liaison lead. And these two positions would work together with our faculty members and implement this project. So the industry training specialist took on the project of undertaking a desktop survey of existing programs across Canada that offered training and education related to outdoor recreation, parks, and tourism. What we didn't want to do was replicate or duplicate experiences that were already available and adequately servicing the needs of Indigenous learners. We also had a plan for Joe's work in his role as the Indigenous Community Liaison Lead. We had anticipated that he would compile a list of communities and Indigenous service agencies across Northwestern Ontario, contact the people on his list, and see if there's any interest in collaboration. From those responses, we had budgeted to have some support for him to travel to those communities, engage in some in-person conversation to answer our primary questions of what level of interest is there in the kind of content that we deliver through our program? What kind of barriers exist to learners from those communities and service agencies in accessing our program in its current form? And then what kinds of solutions could we develop together? So I'm going to pass it over to Joe, who will share how the plan ended up transpiring into a slightly different shape.
Thank you, Julie. The first couple of weeks of working on the project was, well, even trying to reach out to a lot of First Nation communities in Northern Ontario wasn't going as planned as I thought it would be. And there was not a lot of responses back. There was limited responses from the communities and organizations, and it wasn't progressing as I anticipated. And after a couple weeks that went by, it started to look a little frustrating, and didn't really know for sure whether or not if how this project would end. But in our Indigenous culture is that you don't go look and try and gain the knowledge, you let it come to you. And I took those teachings, and you know what? I certainly just let it be, let it settled. And even though that we weren't getting a lot of feedback, and the project wasn't progressing as I wanted to go, Again, it was in the early stages of this project, and it wasn't a couple weeks that went by, and it was during early spring, and I saw this advertisement from my home territory of the Anishinaabe Nation land-based gathering here in Thunder Bay. And it was all accidental that how I came about it, and I said to the team, "Is it? I think it'd be certainly worthwhile to attend and see what's going on." And having grown up in my territory, I was already aware what was going on in the land-based learning, and especially with the Jordan's principle and what kind of land-based programming they were doing in the territory. So I attended, and the first day, uh, there was individuals from certain First Nation communities that were providing information on their Indigenous programming that they were doing in their home communities. And during break, I ran into my cousin. He's a land-based coordinator at Tommy Beardy Treatment Center in my home community of Muskrat Dam First Nation. And during that break, we were talking, and he shared some of the frustrations that him and his team that were facing at the treatment center organization running Indigenous land programming on for their clients on the land. And some of these traditional knowledge keepers that were working for the organization, they had difficult on securing or locating outdoor recreational programming, and especially for the traditional knowledge keepers. And some of these programs, what they were looking for required to be credited training in outdoor land-based programming. And we chatted, and he shared with me with the people that he was there with that they were in search of looking or obtaining specific outdoor recreational courses for their traditional knowledge keepers to take clients out on the land for outdoor recreational programming. I took that information and brought that back to the team, and I think that's certainly that one of the main areas it really provided and sparked interest where we could start to collaborate with land-based organizations in the Nan Territory. So as we went on throughout the next couple of weeks and months, I start to gather more data on specific program organizations such as the Falcon High Peaks Healing Center in Sulcout, Northern Ontario Sulcout. And they were trying to implement the same land-based programming. And one of the challenges they were running up against was they had individuals with the traditional knowledge, but they needed these traditional knowledge holders with specific kind of outdoor recreational certification to run their programming on the land. Reason being is for insurance purposes, for funding purposes. So they were looking for this kind of training, courses, programming, whatever you want to call it, to send their traditional knowledge keepers so they could get properly trained in certification, chainsaw, canoeing, boat, and other outdoor recreational activities. And I think within that time period, I started to, when I was looking and doing research, it really opened my eyes when I was looking at the advertisements in Northwestern Ontario on organizations looking for traditional knowledge keepers to work for them and to develop programming for the Indigenous youth, to develop activities, land activities, to have those skills of developing programs. So as I learned and gathered more information, I brought that back to the team, and I think that, I mean, good for time. Okay. Okay. So what we learned from the months of speaking and engaging with stakeholders in the Anishinaabe Nation territory and also Robinson Treaty territory, that there was a significant need for these kind of programs and courses to run these land camps. And I think that's where we really started to grasp that, hey, we could work together with these outdoor recreational land program organizations on potentially developing um, um, programs for their organizations. Yeah. So, yeah.
One of the things that Joe really helped to validate was that the content that we deliver in our program, that there's aspects, key components of our program in terms of risk management and safety, technical skill development, program logistics, and therapeutic recreation. Those are all sort of subjects that that could be used in conjunction with the existing programming in community. And one of the things that really came out of the work that Joe did with us is that we had originally thought that there would be youth interested in seeking a career outdoors. That's where most of our students come from, is straight out of high school thinking they'd like to have a career in the outdoors. And we figured there would be the same kinds of interests among Indigenous communities if the young learners knew that our program existed. But what Joe's work and his conversations with his connections really revealed to us is that there's a whole other potential group of learners that we hadn't really anticipated in the mature professionals working in community and delivering these land-based programs, who might be seeking qualifications in addition to complement the extensive life skills and traditional practices that they already had. And so bringing that into our perspective was really helpful in framing our understanding of the barriers to accessing the kinds of education that we currently offer through our program. For both youth coming from remote communities as well as the mature learners, the length of our current program, in that it's a full-time commitment for 4 years to obtain the degree, that time commitment in itself was already challenging. Pairing that with the need to relocate in order to take our program in person. Very few of our courses within outdoor recreation parks and tourism are offered in a hybrid or online format. Meant that there was a number of people who wouldn't be able to leave the community for an extended period of time because they had professional or personal commitments based in their community.
Mhm.
So those were two major barriers that exist in our current structure. And I'm going to pass it over to Leigh, who's going to share how we engaged with partners to come up with potential solutions to those particular barriers.
Thanks, Julie. So yeah, we we had some hunches coming into this process, and some of the work that Joe was doing was validating that. It was also showing us how little we did know, which is the classic researcher problem. And so some of this info on this slide here, the first point in particular, that 2-day NAN land-based conference in the spring of 2023 was a real turning point for us. And it happened early on, so that's good. We had just received our funding announcement in sort of March or April, and so this was great. But it also left us thinking about, okay, what's next? And so we thought that, again, through some of Joe's relationships and connections, that we would reach out to the folks at the Oshkosh Wenjack Education Institute, which is an affiliated Indigenous education organization with NAN. And so Joe, being Joe, went out and caught a bunch of fish and cooked a bunch of fish and basically made a beautiful feast for us. And I bragged about my delicious tartar sauce, and then I forgot to make it. But anyway, we had this lovely lunch with the folks from Oshkosh to talk about really the fact that that Oshkosh and Seven Gens and other organizations are doing a good job of reducing the barriers for Indigenous learners. And within a conventional post-secondary environment like a university, we're very tied to the semester system. We're tied to a lot of structures that are movable in some sense, but it is a lot of infrastructural work within the institution to move those barriers. And so we thought, well, maybe a partnership is what we need. And I still think that is what we need. But what that meeting gave us, and grateful to Lori and to Kim at Oshkosh for sort of sharing with us all the ways in which this could work, but we needed to continue to do some work on our end, and that this was more of a long game for us. And so we came away from that and we thought, okay, well, so that's one really valuable perspective. And here we are just dipping our toes into learning what people want. And our original proposal, we had said we wanted to go into communities and host people within their own community. And then we sort of questioned that approach because we weren't sure what kind of engagement we would get going in for 1 or 2 days as unknown entities into communities. And one of the things that folks may or may not know about Thunder Bay is that Thunder Bay plays host to a lot of the head offices of territorial organizations or satellite offices of territorial organizations. So people who represent their community and their community's interests in a variety of ways. And so we thought, well, maybe we can invite people from different social services, educators. We invited students, Indigenous students from our own program, community members, and then other representatives from territorial organizations to form a steering committee that could give us guidance in terms of what our community is interested in, where should we be heading with this work. And it was really important to us that we were not replicating an extractive model of doing research with Indigenous communities. And so everyone received honoraria, or they were invited to receive honoraria. Some decided not to take it because it was part of their paid work. And we hosted them with meals. And we just really wanted to create an environment where we could come to people with very specific questions. So we were using their time as valuably as possible. So Julie, I think it's Julie, is going to talk about some of the goals and action items that came out of that.
Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of work to be done. Some of the actionable things could be really easily moved forward. Whereas other things, as Leigh mentioned, with the relationship with Oshkosh, these are much longer term kinds of initiatives. So we worked with the steering committee and came up with a list of things that we can start working towards. And we broke that up into near term, medium term, and long term kinds of initiatives. In the near term, already we had, as we were going through the ONCAT project, just doing the project started putting into our mind, we've got to be a little bit more proactive and make these connections where we can, as soon as we can. And we have at Lakehead University 3 Indigenous access programs, which are 8-month programs that support Indigenous learners who may not qualify for the typical admission requirements at Lakehead. And so the coordinator of one of the Indigenous access programs asked our program if we'd be open to having their students attend our first year classes. And we said yes, and we had 8 or 10 students from the Indigenous Transition Year program take at least one of our first year courses. And that exposure to our program led to 6 of those students applying to the program. 5 accepted their offers, and 3 are currently studying and continuing their studies in our program. So that showed us that even just exposure and awareness of the kinds of learning that we offer was one thing that can remove a barrier in terms of just, letting people know that we exist and giving them a chance to try us out before making that long-term commitment to take part in our program. Another thing that was also already brewing is that our program was already delivering and creating a suite of micro-credentials related to tourism. And near the end of our ONCAT project, the Ministry of Colleges and Universities put a call out for new micro-credential development. And that's where we built on the information that Joe had showed us, that risk management was a particularly high priority in terms of building capacity within the communities to deliver land-based programming. So we worked with our partners from the steering committee, put together a proposal for a 6 to 8 week micro-credential in risk management, specifically within the context of the delivery of land-based programming. And so the content has been created. We've had it reviewed by subject matter experts, an Indigenous curriculum specialist, and now it is in the queue to be reviewed for academic or quality assurance, and that will allow us to offer it next year. So those were, immediate things that we can start building upon to work towards creating access. And the micro-credentials in particular allowed us to circumvent the barrier of people having to move from their community to take this course because it's delivered online, as well as the short-term nature of the micro-credential.
Thanks, Julie. So, as folks who are familiar with academic work might know, we do our research and we do our service and we do our teaching. And so another part of my research agenda was developing relationships and working and really my own learning as well. The hide tanning process. Sorry if you couldn't hear me there. I had my finger over the mic. And so I just want to say at the start of this slide that I'm really grateful to a local artist and hide tanner, Jean Marshall, Shelby Gagnon, and then our colleague, Professor Larissa Speak, and the Faculty of Law here at Lakehead. And they've all been really big teachers for me in this area. And so we've, through my research collaborations with Professor Speak and Jean and Shelby, we've now hosted 2 hide tanning gatherings on Lakehead campus in Thunder Bay in the city. We held them in the downtown North Core of Thunder Bay. And this process was really kind of like a parallel track to the ONCAT process. So, of course, I'm connected to both projects, but they were sort of building on each other, building momentum tangentially. So this has been a really exciting community-based and community-informed research project. It's across sector, interdisciplinary, and has provided a lot of land-based learning opportunities for our students. So I like to try to work hard and work smart. And so as we're trying to build these, community events and provide these learning opportunities, we've built into our program courses that align with these hide tanning gatherings. So last year in particular, we had a dedicated course to hide tanning, and the students had to do a gathering project. They had to come to the gathering, and then they had to do a post-gathering reflection project. And then this year, I actually integrated, because we have to be clever about our resources, as everyone knows, I integrated the hide tanning project into my 3rd-year undergraduate research methods course and focused our undergraduate research methods course on the work of Kathleen Absalon and her work around Indigenous methodologies. So this was an opportunity where ONCAT got me thinking about these relationships and then bringing this part of my research agenda into our classroom so that our students could benefit from it as well. And also as a demonstration that within this academic unit that we work in, as I said at the very beginning, that hasn't always had a good relationship and hasn't always reflected on its own, sort of colonial implications, to situate and center this work and the people who are leading this work, who are, women and really non-binary Indigenous people in our community, as knowledge holders and as experts. And I think that in and of itself is a really powerful demonstration of learning and teaching, and who is an expert and who belongs in this space of the university. So I am going to continue to talk to you about some of our medium-term goals. And so again, anyone who works in university knows that sometimes things don't move quite as quickly as we want them to, but we try. So one of the things that we offer is we offer a number of double degree programs through Outdoor Rec. And so we offer a standalone honors Bachelor of Outdoor Rec and a few other double degrees. But one that we didn't offer was a BA with a specialization in Indigenous learning. And so we worked with our colleagues in Indigenous learning. Julie is the wizard of this. She created a degree structure that would work so that in 4 years, students can come out with the Honors Bachelor of Outdoor Rec and a BA in Indigenous learning. So that's currently in our Senate infrastructure for approval and should be available for students in coming fall 2026. Because we're seeing a lot of crossover, right, between students who are interested in our experiential and sometimes land-based pedagogy and the work that our colleagues in Indigenous learning are doing. We're also, again, we've identified that a lot of our, what students like about our program is the in-person experiential learning, but that's also a barrier for students who may not have the flexibility or it's not realistic for them to relocate. And so we're looking at ways in which we can offer hybrid or online components. So we might not be able to offer the whole degree, but what pieces of the degree can we offer? And so we're looking at, we've got hybrid and online delivery models of our risk management course, our programming course, and we've got a couple others in the works. I'm planning to try to offer my research methods course online next fall with some experiential components built into the course. I'm very passionate about PLAR, the Prior Learning Assessment and Recognition. I think everybody, Daphne's laughing, but everybody that knows me knows I'm really passionate about this. We admittedly are in development of having a better PLAR structure at Lakehead. And I think this is something that would really benefit both our traditional learners, but also the learners that we have learned about through this process. And then the final thing, we've got little check marks there because those are the things we've done. And so we've had a couple of short international programs. In particular, Julie led a 10-day course to Chile last fall with students that was totally funded. And they worked with knowledge holders and university staff I'm going to blank where you were.
Pucón, Chile.
In Pucón, Chile. And we are looking at funding opportunities to do more of that kind of work. So those are some of our medium term goals.
I think that's still you.
Is this me still? Oh, great. So another thing that I've been quite passionate about is looking at how we can shorten our degree option. So can we look at having a 3-year Bachelor of Outdoor Rec? Can we have a co-op option that enables our students who do have life and work experience to have a co-op year? What does PLAR look like within that? So long term, looking at sort of more substantial shifts to the degree structure. And again, sort of waving my magic wand and saying like an online degree, that's not necessarily realistic. Although this is where our partnerships or potential partnerships with Indigenous education institutes become really valuable. And also looking at some of the transfer agreements between colleges and universities. A lot of the stuff on the long term, those of you that are sort of familiar with universities or not, whatever institution that you're part of, a lot of these things on this slide are above my purview as a director or chair of a department. So this is where we need to work with our upper administrators, the ones who are authorized to sign memorandum of understandings and agreements with organizations. But this, I think, is really where where we can go in the long term. And we've learned that there could be traction for these kinds of ideas through that work that Joe did for us. And there's Joe being a teacher for us on this slide a few years ago. So yeah, those are some of our longer term considerations. Oh, and I'm going to keep on going, rolling right on. Great. So, um, one of the things we really want to emphasize, and we were trying really hard before we came on this call with all of you to think about, like, what are the granular details you need to know, but what are the big picture things that we want you to know? Why were we invited here to talk to you, and why does this matter? Many of you are not in our context. You may not be running a program like we are. So, like, what do you take away from this? Because we're really grateful you spent this time with us today. And I think one of the big pieces for me, or a couple of the big pieces for me with this project, is that we were very intentional from the start, that we did not want to replicate some of the ills of university-based research in that have been done in the past, right? We didn't want to replicate this model of, we're the experts, we're the university professors, we want to know stuff from you, and we're not going to give anything back. We wanted to be reciprocal. And I kept saying to myself and others, like, I do not want to engage in an extractive way of doing research. I want this to be collaborative, and I want to demonstrate to people that they can trust us. And that required like self-reflection on our part, and reflexivity, modifying based on what we were learning, and we focused in on that today, so you could see that sometimes we have a plan, and it's a good plan, but the work is pulling us in a different direction. And if we hadn't been open to that, I don't think we would have seen all of the things that have come out of this project. Yeah, I think I'm passing it over to Joe now. Is that true? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, just to recap on the reflections and for the last couple of years and seeing how this project grew into something remarkable and how it's projecting in a direction where, reconciliation is certainly one of the areas where I've seen how this project is taking place. And I just want to share, a story that I learned a couple days ago is that after I left, after finishing up with this project, well, not really finishing, but leaving the project and knowing sometimes you cross your fingers and hope something positive comes out of it. And how I look at things on reconciliation is that I don't think there's a clear path, but certainly if you could plant a seed and see how it grows afterwards. And just listening to Leigh and Julie yesterday talk, and after myself going to the Nan Land Base conference, I learned that Leigh and another faculty member continued that. And that is powerful in itself because you're continuing to grow that connection, that relationship building. And that's remarkable. And I was so happy to hear that. And this, I think overall, this project has so much potential to go beyond where our expectations thought would go to. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
I'm going to comment on the last couple of points on our slide, and that, and I'm going to do that in reverse, actually. It is certainly something that we've recognized as an ongoing process. I think when we first wrote our proposal for ONCAT, we thought, 18 months we'll have this all settled and figured out. And, it's not that. This is definitely, we have certainly some wins that we're very proud of, but we also recognize that there's still a ton of work to do. And one of the things that I think is really important, and I'm so grateful to have at Lakehead University, is that there is a position for an Indigenous curriculum specialist full-time. Joe, after our project, has rolled into that position, which means that we can continue to benefit from his knowledge, from his connections, from the learnings that he's offering us in terms of workshops on how to decolonize and indigenize our curriculum, how to appropriately, invite knowledge keepers and elders to support the work that we do. We're learning a lot and we're committed to learn a lot. And if we didn't have this opportunity where somebody is in that role to help us in our journey towards learning, it would be a very difficult thing. And so because this is an ongoing process, we can still, call on Joe to join us in a presentation like this. And he's available and it's part of his work. He can still advise us on next steps when we come across a bit of a roadblock or a hurdle. He can connect us to folks who can help us overcome those hurdles. So I'd say that at the institutional level, having someone in that role is really very beneficial.
Definitely.
I think at this point, we're going to wrap up, our predetermined stuff we wanted to share and open things up for questions.
We do have one in the chat.
There is one in the chat from Trisha.
Yeah.
But whether you're thinking of shortening programs or condensing programs or offering them year round, or how are you imagining some of this?
It's a great question, Trisha. I kind of want to say to you, what do you think? Which is a classic professor response. But I think that we're open to whatever's going to work for the learners. So conventionally, our program doesn't run in the spring, summer months because our typical student population do seasonal work. And so they're not around. And so like some of our other colleagues in other programs, their courses run, or the courses in their program run all year round. We have a couple that run every spring, but we don't offer very many. But I think if we're looking at tailoring something to learners with like a particular considerations, like, folks working in community at particular careers, then we would want to work with what worked for them. And I know that other condensed programs operate 12 months of the year, and then folks can get done in 2.5 or 3 years. And personally, I think with co-op as a potential option as well, that could really work. I worry about people getting burnt out being in school 12 months of the year, but perhaps if it was a bit varied, that might look different. Or if they were going to do their seasonal work and that was co-op. Yeah, exactly. Lots of considerations, Trisha. Julie, I'm looking at Julie because she looks like she's got something. This is where her brain comes to shine.
Our project team has learned to read minds. I'd say that's another real benefit.
Yeah.
The opposite is also true, is that we've considered how we might be able to structure the program and able to have people take it at short chunks at a time, and it would actually extend the length of time warranted to complete the program, but that it's okay not to have to cram it into 3 or 4 years if they wanted to do the full degree.
And one I'm just going to add, sorry, one piece that's a consideration as well is that our colleagues in education here at Lakehead are running an education program, or a teacher education program for folks that are living and working in community. And they typically come in the summer. And part of the reason that they come in the summer is A, because they're not teaching, right? And B, because the residence is pretty widely available. So there's accommodations. Because one of our specialists that reviewed our project at the end and helped us with some of our reporting indicated to us that like a big shout out to Jojo Guillet, one of the barriers for students coming from up north as well is housing. And so even though I think the perception from friends and colleagues in the South is that, there's plenty of housing here and it's very inexpensive, that's changing here like everywhere else in the province, and is being affected by the same forces, like, high cost short-term rentals driving up the rental market and that sort of thing. So housing is still, and then of course for folks coming from northern communities, prejudice and a variety of other social factors. So we just, want to think really carefully about how we're accommodating students to come in and take courses. Yeah. I'm looking at Julie. She's nodding. Okay. I should look at you at the screen. Does anybody else have any? Oh, there we go.
Are you seeing the accolades coming in from
Yeah,
Stephanie Thompson?
thank you so much, Stephanie. And I see you're seeing some of your folks. Yeah, there's people from the East Coast in here. That's wild.
Wow.
And yes, Stephanie, the recording will be made available. This has been very inspiring. It's a nice way to end our fall series. So thank you so much because, you know, I think that recently, actually, I think it was Adam Hopkins who called us at ONCAT activists. And I was kind of taken aback when he said that. I was like, activists? And he was like, yeah, ONCAT people are activists. And I've been reflecting on that and listening to you talk. If we really, really, really want to achieve equity for all learners, as well as push the colonial structures, then we need to break down so many of our fixed ideas about what a course looks like. And like you can break things into chunks. You absolutely can break things into smaller chunks. You can recognize different kinds of units of learning. And also, I did want to say that, and there may be other institutions doing this, but we know that Six Nations Polytechnic has been working with several universities to partner with them to support Indigenous learners so that they can do their first year of university, at Six Nations Polytechnic and not have to leave home, not have to deal with the housing, the transportation, as well as just the adjustment issues in their first year. So those are also possibilities for some of the courses and units and chunks and whatever we want to call the learning that your program produces.
Yeah, totally. And I think those folks are doing all that work so well. That's why I think a partnership is so valuable. I just saw Linda, Linda Rodenberg, you had your hand up. Was that accidental?
Oh, Linda.
She's here. I saw you.
Let me
Sorry.
see if I can allow you to talk, Linda.
Well, if she wants to, maybe it was an accidental hand.
Was it an accident, Linda?
Just put you on the spot.
Yeah,
Just to put you on the spot. Or you
that's
can.
amazing. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. No, I actually did mean to just give that last item a bit of a round of applause when I'm listening to our excellent professors and my colleagues here today. I'm just so excited about this work, and I think that we are activists, and we are, there's a sense of mutual obligation in the relationships you talked about today that is really calling on us to do this work. So I meant to just give you a round of applause, but I'll raise my hand and say that I'm here to help with this work whenever possible.
Thanks, Linda. I was too quick on the draw with my chat job to monitor the chat. Thanks for your help and support, Linda, always.
Any other questions for Leigh and Joe and Julie? Leigh has put her email address in the chat, and if you lose that, you can always get in touch with Meryl and me. I want to quickly say thank you to Meryl, who always supports these Connect and Learns and connects with the people who are giving their time to us. And thank you all for showing up today and hearing about this. I feel like we should do a follow-up like in a year and get an update on how it's going and what's going on. So, and I'm really proud that ONCAT could, seed some of this, right? Those trees are going to take a long time to grow, but I'm glad we could play some small part in that. All right, people, you have a little bit of, there's 2 minutes left for questions. And if we don't see any come in the chat, we will say our goodbyes.
Yeah, you don't want me to get into my comedy routine.
I will say I was happy to hear you mentioned Kathy Absalom because of many things that I've learned from her. One is so simple, but it is just keep putting one foot in front of the other. So even though, things take a lot, relationships, of course, you have to give that lots of time to grow. But also things go slowly in our institutions for all sorts of reasons. And it can be discouraging and it can be frustrating. And reconciliation is gonna be slow, sadly, but it is. Hopefully it'll be better because of that slowness in a way, you know? And so, I often think of Kathy just telling me and a group of people, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Sometimes you're bushwhacked, I mean, or whatever the term is, but.
Well, and I think I would say too, like as a settler person to encourage, I know we're at 159, but I would really encourage, and Absalon does this too, encourages settlers who feel like-minded to take the initiative, right? Like it really should, reconciliation really should be initiated by settler people. And I think that one thing this project taught us too was how willing people were to work with us when we did it in a good way. And so, yeah, just give it a try, and people will be very generous and kind, and also point you in the right direction when you're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I can see lots of hearts floating at the screen. It is 2:00, so many thanks to Julie, Joe, and Leigh. And we will see you all in February at our conference, but also for more Connect and Learns in March, April, May, and June. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.